Hey everybody, this is Modern Refugee, out having my coffee this morning. And I wanted to talk to you guys about something that I don't hear a lot of people talk about. And what that is reading the signs of nature, both in relation to navigation and forecasting the weather. Because if something would happen where modern weather forecasting isn't available, you'd have to rely on reading the signs to predict your weather and navigation. And one of the first things that I learned when I was a kid was how to find the North Star. And the North Star has been used for a navigational aid for millennia. And it was one of the first things that I was taught. I was taught how to find the Big Dipper and to find the two pointer stars on the end of the Big Dipper and use that to locate the North Star. And the North Star is not the brightest star in the sky, and when it's hazy like it has been now, it's even dimmer than what it normally is, but it can be located. And the Big Dipper actually rotates counterclockwise around the North Star throughout the night. And it was one of the first things with the stars that I was taught when I was a kid. And another thing that I was taught in the winter was how to use Orion to locate yourself and how to use that to find the directions. And Orion more or less rises in the east and it sets in the west. And when Orion is at the height in the sky, Orion sits in the southern sky. So then in the wintertime on cold, clear winter nights, you could find the North Star, you could see Orion, so Orion's belt more or less points east and west, so then you've got pretty much a compass in the sky. And being taught the constellations was something my mom would always take me out in all the different seasons and show me the different constellations. So, but the two that always related back to navigation were finding the North Star and finding Orion and Orion's belt. So if you have a chance, get out when it's nice outside and find those stars so you can always find them again if you would ever need them for navigation on a clear night. And the other thing was weather and how it relates to wind directions and the moon. And weather's going to be different in different parts of the world. So, I'm here in Michigan, so what I'm telling you is more or less for the lower peninsula of Michigan where I'm at here. But some of the things will carry over. And the cloud patterns was one. The big one was mackerel sky that I was always taught when I was a kid. And mackerel sky looks like fish scales, and that's why it's called mackerel sky. And typically, if you have a mackerel sky, within 24 to 36 hours, you will have some type of rain or precipitation. And another one for us here is a southeast wind. If we have a real strong southeast wind, if the wind direction changes around to the southeast, we usually within 24 hours, we have some type of precipitation. And those are a couple that have held true for me pretty much my entire life. I can tell that precipitation is coming if I see those two things, if there's a southeast wind or if there's mackerel sky. Another thing is rings around the sun and rings around the moon, and particularly around the moon. A ring around the moon, and the closer that ring is, the closer we are to precipitation. And that's another thing that I was taught when I was younger, is always look for rings around the sun and the moon, because they portend a rain, or either rain or snow event or some type of change in the weather. Typically a northwest wind will bring cool, cold, dry air. So typically if you have a northwest wind, you'll have a clearing pattern after a storm or whatever. And in the wintertime, it's particularly important because it'll typically get really, really cold after a storm. And that's another one. If a storm goes through, you really don't want to be caught outside, because usually the temperature is going to plummet afterward. And that's another group of natural signs to look for that I use to basically predict the weather by just reading the signs. And the last one is one that I was taught by my grandmother in particular, and it was the full moon. If a storm happens within 24 hours of the full moon, either before or after, it's typically going to be whatever that weather is around the full moon. That's what it's going to be typically for the month, or at least for 3 weeks. And so if it's really fair and nice during the full moon, it's typically going to be fair and nice for that entire month. And the same thing if a storm falls on the full moon, it's typically going to be a very bad storm, and then it's going to be like that whole month. So you're going to have, if you have a severe storm on the full moon, it's going to be like that for several weeks. You're going to have that stormy pattern of weather for the next several weeks. And the other one that they would say, if it would rain on the full moon, it's going to be a rainy month. And it's another one that just through my own personal experience and observation over the years, that has been very, very true. If you got a bad storm, bad rainstorm on the full moon, you're going to have a wet few weeks ahead. But anyway, just wanted to share these things here in my area of Michigan, and kind of encourage everybody to go out and read the signs in their area. And now it's easy enough because you can match up the signs that you witness yourself, and then you can match them up to modern weather forecasting, and you can say, hey, you know what? It's true, if this particular event happens, this will happen within 24 hours or whatever, because you can compare the two from the signs that you're reading plus the modern weather forecasting. It's a good time to do it now when everything's working, because if that modern weather forecast doesn't work, or for some reason you can't get that, you can still at least read the signs in your area and sort of predict the weather and predict your chart your navigation, and it'll help you out if nothing else is available to you and you just use your ability of observation. But anyway, this is Modern Refugee. Appreciate all my subscribers out there. Hope you guys got a little information, a little entertainment out of this video, and you guys have a good one.